Chapter 2. Monday, July 7th, 9:30 a.m. LAX to CLT to WAL. Luke. "Are you sure you don't want me to take the 405 instead of the Canyon?" the cab driver asks as he pulls away from my house in Studio City, the one I won't be seeing for several months. "Traffic isn't bad." "I prefer surface streets, thanks." Hopefully my tone is curt enough to prevent further discussion without being rude. I have my reasons for avoiding the highway. No easy feat in the City of Angels, but I'm not getting into them with a stranger. Anyway, I've got plenty of time before my flight departs, and I've got phone calls to make. Goodbyes to say that will distract me from the drive as well as from my worries about my new job. Just as I pull my cell from my jacket pocket, it vibrates. Seeing my buddy Max's name on the screen, I flip it open. "Don't worry, man, I'm on my way to the airport." "I'm not checking up on you." Max was my roommate at boarding school, so not only does he know most of my secrets, but I know when he's bullshitting. "You sure about that?" "Okay, I am checking up on you, but I'm also calling with news. Some good, some bad." Max is the latest showrunner on the hit TV show Lawson's Reach. Number 5, to be exact. The production hired and fired 3 in the second half of its first season. My old friend is taking a calculated risk in bringing me on as producing director. As showrunner, he has to be in LA full-time running the writer's room, and would typically rely on the line producer or UPM to be his eyes and ears on location. But because this particular show has a history of drama, both on and off camera, he wants someone he can really trust in Wallington. By hiring a guy like me, Max is betting that our long, personal history will be more beneficial than the relatively short length of the list of credits on my directing resume. "Bad news first," I say. "New budget from the studio means we've got to cut costs, which means you only get a driver for the first couple weeks." The egg white and spinach omelet I had for breakfast suddenly threatens to come back up. "Well, that's a problem." "You have a driver's license?" "That I haven't used in 3 years." "I thought you said therapy was helping." I slump down in the back seat and lower my voice to answer. "Only in terms of being a passenger." "Maybe this is a chance to change that," he says, like it's no big deal, even though he knows it is. "Max, you know it's not..." Trying and failing to keep irritation out of my voice when just the thought of driving makes my hands clammy and my heart race, I do my best to concentrate on my breathing. "I mean, the town is tiny," he goes on. "It'd be a good place to work through things. Plus, you said you requested the same driver you had on that movie you shot there, right?" "Yeah, so?" "You liked her?" "What is this, 8th grade?" "Not liked her, you idiot. You said she was super chill, unimpressed by your famous ass." "I'd argue that more than my ass is famous. Or was, anyway." "My point is, instead of driving you around, she could help you get back to doing it yourself." With an eye on the taxi driver, I swallow further argument. No need to air my dirty laundry in public. "I'll figure something out." "I'm just saying, man, you could take this as an opportunity." "Anything else?" I ask, my tone probably sharper than it should be with my boss. "I'm about to fax the final budget to O'Neill, the line producer. I wanted you to know about the change before you went over it with her." "Thanks, man. I do appreciate the heads up." It wouldn't be a good look to wig out on my first day at the office. "O'Neill's a ball buster, but she's good people." "Anything else? I owe Angie a call before I get on the plane." Tell your lovely mother I said hi. You have the latest scripts?" I pat my messenger bag, bulging with photocopies. "Yep. Plan to go over them on the plane." "That's the good news, by the way. You've got the green light from the network to direct the first episode." "Wow. That's great." Both Max and I were worried the powers that be might insist on bringing in a director with more experience. "I had to beg a little bit, so don't fuck up." "Thanks for the vote of confidence." "You're welcome." I open my mouth to tell him that I'll check in tomorrow, but before I can, he says, "Oh shit, there's one more thing. Speaking of literally fucking up, we just got this memo directly from the chairman of the board of Brothers Werner." Sounds ominous. It's a no-tolerance policy for quote-unquote fraternization among employees. People are already calling it the morality memo. What is this, the 1950s? My theory? It has to do with two things. You remember how I said it was all hush-hush why the last showrunner got fired? Yeah, I answer, wondering where this is going. People get fired in Hollywood all the time for all kinds of reasons. When I cornered one of the writers who's been around from the beginning, he told me the previous showrunner had an affair with a writer. Why is that such a big deal? Apparently, after they broke up, she had a huge meltdown in the studio commissary, right after the show got that mention in 10 Things I Hate About You. You mean the dad character saying something about Lawson's River where the kids share beds and whatnot? It doesn't matter that they didn't quite get the name right. That line plus the woman's meltdown stirred up controversy all over again about the show being overly sexual. Long story short, they fired the writer and bought out the showrunner's contract. Typically unfair. Meanwhile, we're still trying to sell the idea of a love story between two male characters to the suits. He clears his throat. All this is to say that I need you to keep things squeaky clean over on the right coast. Keep those kids out of each other's beds. When I groan, he echoes it. My thoughts exactly. Good luck, brother. After I hang up, I take a moment to digest all this information before calling my mother, who also happens to be my manager. Ex-manager, technically, though she's refusing to accept that I fired her. Once her assistant puts me through, she starts right in. Are you sure you can't put off leaving another day? Because I was just talking to casting at Universal and they've got a movie you'd be perfect for. Angie, we talked about this. I could get you a meeting later today. Then you could take the red-eye. For one thing, my first day is tomorrow. I'm not starting this gig by driving directly to work from the airport. And two, when are you going to get it? I quit. My mother's acting career fizzled out when she had 3 kids back to back. After I booked a commercial that she lost out on, she shifted gears. I'll never know if leaving acting behind was a relief or a disappointment for her, but I do know she flourished as a manager. My brother and I were her first clients, but 20-some years later, she's got more clients than I can keep track of. My brother's career is booming, so I'm not sure why she takes my failures so seriously. Before she can launch into her usual arguments like, I just need to take a class from this guy, get a haircut from that woman, change my workout, yada yada yada, I'm saved by the bell. Gotta go, Angie. Kelly's on the other line. Oh, tell her to call me. I have something to run by her. Did I mention that my mother also represents my longtime co-star/best friend with whom I have a complicated public relationship? Stifling a sigh, I promised to pass on the message and tell her I'll check in with her and my father once I'm settled. I hope you're not making a mistake. Running second unit shoots and babysitting a bunch of teenage actors in the middle of nowhere, she tuts. Are you sure you want to give up on your own career for that? Maybe it's because I was her first client, the one responsible for extinguishing her own rising star. But my mother can't quite accept that not every child phenom can cut it as an adult. Too many hours and too little fresh air later, my feet finally hit the ground in Wallington, North Carolina. I'll be calling the beach town they call the Hollywood of the East home for the next 9 months, assuming Max and I can manage to hang on to our jobs. After the very short walk from the gate to baggage claim, I begin to scan faces for my driver. It doesn't take long before I catch the glint of her midnight black hair. When I catch sight of her profile, my reaction is instantaneous. A spot between my shoulder blades, muscles so habitually tense I forget what it feels like to relax them. Poof. Let's go. I've thought a lot about this woman in the past 2 years. She probably had no idea, but she helped me get through a pretty rough time. Between dealing with my fears of being in a car to facing the reality that my career was over, I barely said a word to her. It took everything in me to get through each day on that show, pretending I was grateful to be there, even though it was obvious that my career had reached its nadir. I mean, not only was I working on a made-for-TV movie while my brother was bouncing from an Oscar-nominated art house film to a superhero franchise, but I couldn't even score a lead. I was just the snarky best friend. At the time, I was terrified to quit because I'd never done anything else. But that job was the straw that broke the camel's back. 2 things got me through it. Living right on the beach, where watching the sunrise over the water gave me some perspective, and my driver's calm, quiet presence at the beginning and end of each day. Maybe Max is right. If anyone could help me get back in the driver's seat, it'd be her. She's so confident and competent. Maybe it'd rub off. She hasn't seen me yet, so I take a moment to appreciate the view. Not that I'd act on my attraction to her, even without a morality memo hanging over my head, but the woman is so effortlessly beautiful. I'm sure her tawny skin has never seen the inside of a tanning salon. Naturally dark lashes and high cheekbones draw attention to her wide-set, almond-colored eyes. There's nothing showy about her uniform of golf shirt and khakis, or her unfussy ponytail. But her presence commands attention. The moment she sees me, a frown crosses her face briefly before being replaced with a professional smile. It's only when her gaze drops to the carrier in my hand and her brows come together in confusion that I remember Peanut. "Is that a dog?" she asks. "It is." "Your dog?" Yeah." She raises a brow. "Does it need to relieve itself before we get your checked bags?" "Probably." I'd been able to take him out to pee when we changed planes in Charlotte, but the poor guy has been stuck in the carrier for most of the day. She holds out a hand. "Why don't I take him? Or her?" "Him." "Outside while you get your bags," she finishes. "I'd appreciate that, but he's got some issues." "Don't worry. I'm used to clients with issues." I think that was probably an insult directed at me, but I hand her the carrier and tell her I'll meet her out front. The Wallington Airport ground crew takes its sweet time getting the bags to the carousel, but everyone is so friendly while they make you wait that you hardly notice. By the time I emerge from the cooled air of the terminal into the muggy early evening, Peanut, who is much more likely to cower than wag his tail at strangers, is on his back, writhing in pleasure as Danny rubs his belly and whispers sweet nothings to him. The green-eyed monster awakens within, and it takes several beats for me to shush it. Pretty pitiful to be jealous of a scrawny little dog. She looks up when I roll my bag over to the grassy area where she's squatting with the dog. Scooping him up, she juts her chin toward the parking lot. "I'm over here." After spreading a towel on the back seat of the town car, she puts him on top of it, points, and delivers a firm, "Stay," before closing him inside. Picking up the pet carrier from the sidewalk, she peers at the suitcase I've already stowed in the trunk. "Just the one bag?" I take the carrier and drop it next to my bag. I've got some boxes coming with transpo. One perk of having grown up in LA is that you know people everywhere. The uncle of a high school buddy is the head teamster on Lawson's Reach, so my belongings are taking the slow route across the country with the cameras, lights, and other production equipment that can't be rented locally. She closes the trunk. "To production or your rental?" "I'd like to check in at the office first if that's okay with you." "Do they know you brought a dog?" "That is one of the things I need to check in with them about." "Good luck with that." "You don't think one of the beach houses will allow dogs?" She shoots me a pitying look. "Honey, I doubt you're staying at the beach. It's summer. High tourist season. No one wants to rent a beach house to production when they can get triple the rate from tourists. Anyway, laws about dogs on the beach are pretty strict." Shit, I didn't think about that. I still don't know how I got talked into taking him in the first place. I've never had a dog and have no idea what to do with one. But when Kelly found out about this group of dogs that had been rescued from a horrible hoarding situation, she convinced me that adopting him would be good for both of us. More likely, this is yet another impulsive decision on my part that'll come back to bite me on the ass. Perhaps literally. "We going or what?" Danny asks, breaking into my thoughts. "Sorry," I say, and fold my frame into the back seat next to the dog, who, surprisingly, leans against me. I set my hand on his flank and start the breathing exercises recommended by my therapist. In on 4, hold for 4, out for 6. After a few rounds of those, I focus on the sensations around me. Whenever my thoughts swerve toward images from the accident, I do the breathing again. The drive from the airport to the studios is short, but even so, having the little dog next to me is a comfort I hadn't expected. Probably not a good idea to walk in the office with him, though, so I ask Danny if he can stay with her while I pick up my housing information. She agrees, but mumbles something that sounds like, "Don't get used to it." When I pull out my cell phone and ask for her number, she shakes her head. "Those things still don't work here." "Seriously?" "It's not like I'm in charge." "No. If you were in charge, the problem would be fixed." She side-eyes me. "You're assuming I think it's a problem." "You still use a pager, then?" She holds one up and hands me a business card. "I'll wait out here if you're not going to be too long." After I get out of the car, I drop my phone in my briefcase and try to remember what it was like to not be constantly available. I think I liked it.
Danny. Lucas is true to his word and is back at the car within 15 minutes. He's actually spoken full sentences to me today, so I venture a direct question. "What's the news about keeping a dog at a rental?" He holds up a key. She wasn't happy about it, but the housing coordinator talked one of the landlords into it. I just have to make sure he doesn't disturb the neighbors, and I had to put down a big deposit. After handing over the paperwork with the address, he gets in the car. I'm pretty sure I know where this place is, but I pull out a map to make sure. As I scan the grid for the location, I notice he's doing the same breathing thing he did on the drive from the airport to the studios. Instead of ignoring me after I start the car, he asks, "Could I hire you to, give me driving lessons before production starts up?" I meet his gaze in the rear view briefly and determine that he's not joking. "You don't know how to drive? How is that possible?" "I just don't." After stopping at a light, I turn to face him. "Tell me the truth, or there's no way I'll even consider teaching you to drive." He sighs heavily, but before he can spit out whatever crazy reason he has for skipping out on yet another step to adulthood, a beep from behind us has me turning my attention back to the road. "It's a long story," he finally says. "I'd tell you if I could, but I can't." "How do you get around in Los Angeles?" "Drivers, friends, taxis." Being dependent on others to get around is not something I could tolerate. I got my license the minute I turned 16. "Why now?" "Things are different with this job. I'm not the talent, so the budget isn't there for me to have a driver past pre-production. I'm hoping driving here will be easier than it would be in LA. An image of Lucas driving a car pops into my head from some stupid movie he was in. "But I've seen you drive. On TV, I mean." "You watch me on TV?" Glancing in the mirror again, I'm surprised by the sheepish grin on his face. I can tell it's real because it's much more endearing than what I've seen him employ on TV. I shrug, not willing to stroke the guy's ego. "Not on purpose. I can't help it if you show up on the screen when I click the remote. Not that I changed the channel, but I'll never admit that." "In any case," he begins like he's got my number. "What you saw was me behind the wheel of a process car." "Right, of course." I may not work directly on sets like my buddies Sully and Ford, but I have seen the setup where the camera is mounted on a vehicle that tows the car the actors pretend to be driving. I know it's a lot to ask, he says. Why not go to a driving school? Don't you want to learn from an expert? You're a professional driver. Can't get more expert than that. I'm not trained to teach driving, just to get you from point A to point B safely. I mean, I've taught most of my younger siblings and half my cousins to drive, but still. It's more that I trust you, Danielle. His rental is downtown, much closer to the studio than he'd be at the beach. In fact, I'm pulling into the driveway when he says this. The sincerity in his tone has me forgetting what I'm doing momentarily, and I almost take out the mailbox. Pulling my attention back to the thing I'm supposedly so good at, I steer carefully up the slight hill, put the car in park, and set the emergency brake before speaking. You trust me. Why? I turn to face him, and my heart clenches when I see that he's got his arms around his little dog, like they're comforting each other. Despite all my claims otherwise, I'm a sucker for a creature in need, and he seems to need this from me. Like, really need. He hasn't answered my question, and his attention is elsewhere. Not just out the window, but somewhere deep inside. Neither of us says anything until Peanut breaks the spell with a whine from the back seat. When Lucas doesn't move, I say, Your dog might need a tree to pee on. At my words, the man literally shakes himself back from wherever he'd retreated. Right. Sorry. He shifts to grab his messenger bag, and I catch a whiff of his scent. Some of my clients fill the car with heavy colognes and perfumes that take forever to clear out, even by driving along the water with the windows open. But his has always been refreshing, clean and sharp, somehow, like he doesn't tolerate any softness. That I appreciate about the man. Danny? His voice brings me back to earth. Yeah? When do you want to pick up? Does 8 work? I've got meetings all day. Sure, that's fine. But that's not what I was saying. When I meet his gaze, he's got that look again. That honest-to-God I'm up Schitt's Creek without a paddle look. Please think about the driving thing. I'd do anything in return. I nod, promising that I'll think about it. But even as the words leave my mouth, I get what seems like the best and worst idea in the entire world.